Good afternoon. Thank you very much for staying with KTN News. My name is Betty Okari, and this is KTN Newsdesk on the 17th day of December 2015. I hope you're having a great afternoon this day. Well, we want to update you on the latest. We begin with the highlights. National Assembly committees approve Uhuru's nomination of various principal secretaries. 2 people are feared dead after gunmen attacked a lorry in Lamu County. Day 3 of the WTO as ministers express optimism on more deals being struck. We begin here in Nairobi, Kenya, and the country's National Assembly has for the better part of the morning been debating on a report on persons nominated to be principal secretaries in various departments. Yesterday, the House approved all the 7 nominees for appointment to the position of Cabinet Secretary. The House unanimously endorsed President Uhuru Kenyatta's nominees despite condemnation from a section of members that the list of nominees violated the constitutional provisions on the 1/3 gender rule, ethnic and regional balance, and that nominees to the cabinet shall not be members of parliament. Well, this afternoon, the National Assembly will be deliberating on the chairperson and members of the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission. Let's take a look at the happenings that took place this morning.
Is just secondary. These are very qualified individuals, and I think they deserve the position. Mr. Speaker, my recommendation on financial management is based on the fear that in Kenya, if you are a PS or you had a parastatal that starts with the word national or Kenya, the possibility of going to the corruption courts are very high. So we are just urging the new PSs to take heed that the fight against corruption is now extremely serious, and we don't want them to fall prey, so they should be given orientation on financial management. With those remarks, I beg to move.
Very well. Honorable members, I am going to put the question, and I'll start with the first one, which is that this House adopts the report of the Departmental Committee on the Administration and National Security on the vetting of a person for appointment as Principal Secretary, laid on the table of the House on Wednesday, December 16, 2015, and pursuant to the provisions of Article 155, 3B of the Constitution, approves the appointment of Mr. Mika Powon as the Principal Secretary, State Department for Correctional Services. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. As many as of that contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. I put the question also, which is that the House adopts the report of the Departmental Committee on Environment and Natural Resources on vetting of persons for appointment as principal secretaries, laid on the table of the House on Wednesday, December 16, 2015, and pursuant to the provisions of Article 155 3B of the Constitution, approves the appointment of Mr. Charles Sunkuli, as Principal Secretary, State Department for Environment, and Dr. Margaret Mwakima as Principal Secretary, State Department for Natural Resources. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. As many as of our contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it.
Right, and we now want to speak to our reporter Patrick Amimo, who has been following the proceedings at Parliament. And Patrick, thank you very much for joining us. Maybe you can tell us what stood out about this morning's proceedings in Parliament.
Indeed, thank you, Betty. It has been a marathon session for members of the National Assembly since morning. So far, from yesterday evening and today morning, they've already approved 19 principal secretaries to their positions, respective positions. Yesterday, we also had at least 7 cabinet secretaries. 7 nominees to the cabinet secretary position approved by the National Assembly. So today, 10 nominees for the different PS positions have been approved by the National Assembly. Though among them we had Nancy Karigithu, who had issues with at least some report, a petition had been brought concerning integrity, where some member claimed that she was involved into irregular promotions and trips by a few members of staff at the Kenya Maritime Authority, where she was serving as a Director General. But the committee in its report says that it looked into these allegations and found they were baseless, and also the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission investigated the matter and said there was no substantive case on this particular matter. So the EACC had to clear Nancy Kirigithu out of these allegations. The other person that maybe to bring of note in this particular the PS is that the Principal Secretary for Transport will be the youngest PS at 33 years, and that is Mr. Wilson Nyakera Irungu. He's 33-year-old. He's the youngest principal secretary so far in this cabinet of President Uhuru Kenyatta. Remember, last week the president did appoint 24 members, new members to join the cabinet, to add to the 26 that he did appoint in 2013. So once the vetting process will be done, we'll have an expanded cabinet of at least about 48 principal secretaries and 20 cabinet secretaries. This afternoon, we are waiting to see more vetting of at least the 5 remaining principal secretaries who will be vetted this afternoon. And also, together with the 5 principal secretaries who will be vetted this afternoon, we'll also be having the members of the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, led by the chairperson, Philip Kinisu, and the 4 members of the commission. The committee report has already, that was done by the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee, has given an okay to the nominees. All the 5, they say there are no issues, and they say they should be appointed to the positions. But with regard to there is one nominee, that is Rose Mutambo Masharia. In the report, the committee notes that Alego, this MP, the member Olago Aluoch opposed her approval based on the allegations that touched on her integrity. The case that when she was consulted, when she was given a consultancy service by the World Bank, she issued false credentials. And that matter, it was said that the World Bank was investigating the issue, but so far, Rose, when she appeared before the committee, said that she was not aware that the World Bank was investigating her, and the committee dismissed those allegations, saying that they were not on oath. Whoever made the allegations did not swear an oath, so it could not hold. So she was cleared of those allegations. So apart from Olago Luoch, who opposed the approval in the last sitting, out of the 21 members who attended that particular meeting to approve the nominees to the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, it's only Olago Luoch who had a dissenting view. So the 20 members did endorse the membership of this Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission. No, you know very well that the country, the way the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission is currently constituted, it's not having commissioners, and people have questioned the legality of the commission as it is. So the president is eager, and with the way the war on corruption as it gains momentum, it is important that we have a working commission in place. I've read the committee's report on Philip Kinisu, who has been designated to be the chairperson of the committee of the Anti-Corruption Commission, and the committee is very impressed with his presentation during the vetting process. They say he was equal to issues at hand, and given that they want to try him as a hand, because given that he's from the private sector, they want to try and see whether he'll bring changes at the commission. Because in the past we had the commissioners in the past as the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission. Most of them have been lawyers, and they've failed in one area or the other. So the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee does believe that with the incoming of Philip Kinisu, who is coming from the private sector and an accountant to boot, they think that he might turn around the commission and see at least this issue of graft dealt with. We also have another nominee who is a lawyer, Gigishohi, and they also believe that with his legal background in procurement, where at least 70% of corruption cases are said to be executed, I think with his background, the committee believes that he'll give the necessary input to the Anti-Corruption Commission and on the war on graft, especially now that the government is keen to continue with the fight. So we'll be expecting in the afternoon to see how the House goes about this issue. All the nominees, nobody has raised an issue on integrity issues about them, same for Rose Mugoi, which the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission investigated and said she was clean to be approved. Betty?
Right, thank you very much, Patrick Amimo, for that detailed report on what has been happening in the Parliament. And of course, what's going to be happening this afternoon, they will be deliberating on the chairperson and members of the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission. We will be bringing you those proceedings live here on KTN News. Now, we want to move on to the Kenyatta International Convention Center, where our Abby Agena, of course, has been following up on the WTO ministerial conference that has been happening there for the last 2 days now. And Abby, what is going to be happening there today? Maybe you can just bring us up to speed with the latest from there.
Many thanks there, Betty Okari. We are coming to you live from the Kenyatta International Convention Center, where the World Trade Organization conference has entered its third day. Currently, we have the plenary session where various representatives drawn from the countries that are attending this particular conference are making their statements known. Of course, Kenya already made its position known yesterday when we had the Principal Secretary in charge of Foreign Affairs, Dr. Karanja Kibicho, make the statement for Kenya, indicating that Kenya was keen on seeing agricultural subsidies addressed as well as environmental goods. This was just a prelude really of what to expect. Today, a lot of negotiations are currently happening in the various meeting rooms. The trade ministers, industrialization ministers, trade experts are negotiating critical issues that would see Kenya and also Africa have a bigger voice on the global stage. We now want to get more perspectives from the Ghanaian Trade and Industrialization Minister, Ekwas Pio Gabra. Welcome to KTN, and let's just kick off the conversation. For Ghana, what will you be looking forward to from this conference?
Well, we're looking forward to a fair multilateral trading system where developing countries in particular have as much opportunity to have access to the markets of industrialized countries as the industrialized countries have had access to our markets for centuries. As you know, they actually came and took over our countries for a couple of hundreds of years under the colonial system and did whatever they wanted with us in terms of our natural resources, while extracting any raw materials that they could in any quantities that they wished, and then exporting to us whatever their finished goods are. But well, with political independence over the last 50, 60 years, many African countries have been trying to take greater hold of their own economies. This has not been possible in many respects for a wide number of reasons that we will not get into over here. But the world trading system still remains quite unfair to the extent that industrialized countries subsidize significantly their agricultural products. I mean, the United States, who I used to serve as ambassador, along with the Kenyan gentleman, Mr. Kip Korir, we found that the Americans were, subsidizing their farmers with flood insurance and fire insurance, and sometimes paying farmers for producing nothing at all for a particular year in order to, monitor and to manage the output of maize and wheat and sugar and other crops. In Europe also, subsidies continue to today, where the European Union sometimes subsidizes each cow, COW, up to €2 a day. So these are distortions in the global agricultural trade, which in developing countries are asking the industrialized countries to address if they really want a fair and competitive global market. On one hand, they want our markets to be opened, liberalized, which they call trade facilitation, so that manufactured goods from industrialized countries can come into our countries much faster to generate jobs in those countries and increase their revenues and to strengthen their economies, and at the same time using sanitary and phytosanitary criteria for vegetables and agricultural produce from Africa. They often disqualify our produce from entering their markets. So I'm sure Kenyans and East Africans, just like West Africans, have experienced situations where certain products you've sent into European markets in particular, or US markets, are quarantined and are not allowed to enter the market because they say there are some insecticides or there are some chemical residues or whatever it is they want to find to prevent the goods from going in.
And looking at this particular conference, of course, issues of trade continue to dominate the discussions here. We have currently intra-African trade standing at about 15%. Of course, if you look at the global trade, Africa is at a paltry 3%. As an African representative attending this conference, What do you feel about this, and what needs to change from this particular conference? Is it a talk shop, or we will be seeing concrete solutions being arrived at?
Well, this is not the forum really for African countries and African governments and businesses to address intra-African trade issues. This is a global conference, so there are Chinese and the Americans and Indians here. But when African trade ministers meet within the African Union or in other fora, then they can discuss Pan-African issues. But in any case, we from Ghana, on the margins of this conference, have presented and launched here the project called the Pan-African Trade Hub Systems, PATHS or PATHS, which is an aggregation of e-procurement, e-commerce, and e-payment platforms in Africa to allow African businesses, African governments, African entities to know where to procure various goods in quantity. These are bulk commodity goods, not so much on the consumer side. And so if Malawi has a lot of tobacco or tea, or Kenya has a lot of flowers and vegetables they want to sell, how does Gabon or a businessman in Nigeria find out about it? How does a Moroccan who has leather products or fertilizer to sell tell somebody in Botswana or Angola that these are the products I have and this is how much it costs? So this is a platform that we are taking advantage of based on the growth in the telecom sector in our respective countries, the fiber optic cables that are now surrounding our continent, the satellite systems and wireless systems that we are all using to allow M-Pesa, for example, to do so well in East Africa and in Kenya, the payment platforms that are now quite readily available, and even the banking systems where we now have several Pan-African banks operating in 10, 15, 20 countries. So the Stanbics of South Africa, the Eco Banks from West Africa, United Bank of Africa, Bank of Mali, many of these banks are now operating in 10, 15, 20 countries. So Africa has done many things to integrate its economy. There's a lot more to be done. But Kenya Airways is flying to many countries in Africa. Ethiopian Airlines flies to many countries. South African Airlines does the same. And so through these shipping, airline, logistics and cargo management systems, we hope through the PATHS project to support and strengthen inter-African trade so that when we meet next time, whenever that is, we will not be talking about 2-3% of world trade, but maybe double, triple that, and also not just 15% of African trade being amongst African countries, but 20, 25, 30%. So this is a commercial venture in which public agencies and private equity partners are going to be sought. We are expecting to get the full political support of Africa through the African Union heads of state meetings and the support of African Union Secretariat in Addis Ababa, and also the support of other Pan-African financial institutions like the African Export-Import Bank based in Cairo, African Development Bank based in Abidjan, African Reinsurance based right here in Nairobi, and a number of other Pan-African financial institutions, the ECOWAS Bank, the PTA Bank, and so forth. So this is an initiative that Ghana has launched today with the support of Kenya, and we expect other African countries to come along in due course to enable us to have the platforms that allow us to do the real trading. Otherwise, we can talk about Pan-African trade at a theoretical level and sign many agreements amongst us, but then there'll be no real infrastructure that permits our businessmen and even our governments, which do a lot of procurement, to procure from each other.
How soon are we likely to see this system coming up, and what will be the trickle-down effect to the ordinary citizens on the ground? Well,
eventually an ordinary citizen will also be able to buy any products. If you want to buy chocolates in Kenya, you don't have to buy them from Switzerland or Brussels. You can buy them from Ghana or from Cote d'Ivoire. And if somebody wants to buy several bags of tea, for just a normal small enterprise in Nigeria, they could also buy it from any number of East African countries. So eventually people will buy their wines from North Africa or from South Africa rather than from Europe and other regions of the world. So ordinary consumers will begin to feel this as well in due course. But these kind of systems take time because there are regulatory hurdles, there are policy hurdles, there are legislative harmonization that is done in some countries. Sometimes there are technical barriers in terms of the technology, infrastructure itself, or payment system blockages, cyber security concerns that one has to worry about every time I'm using information and communication technologies. So there's a lot of work to be done, but with the support of all these agencies that I'm talking about, we hope that by the time the Continental Free Trade Area agreement is ready to be signed, hopefully in 2017 or soon thereafter, that the basic building blocks of this infrastructure system will also be in place. And of course, you can always improve it. So when you have a Google or your Yahoo or your Facebook, they launch it, and then you find them improving and adding and modifying it with time. It's an ongoing process, and it's a lifelong exercise.
Many thanks there, Equespio Gabra, the Trade and Investment Minister, the Trade and Industry Minister from Ghana, indicating that they have launched a platform that seeks to integrate the African economies, which will see the level of trade go from the current 15% to higher margins. Of course, today we'll also be seeing the ascension of a few other countries to the WTO. Among the countries we are looking forward for today, we have Afghanistan and Kazakhstan that will be making their position known here, as also they'll be accepted to the WTO family. And this brings us to the end of our coverage for now, but at 2 p.m. we will be coming to you live from here with my colleague Joy Dorian Bira to give you more perspectives on what's happening at this particular 10th Ministerial World Trade Organization Conference. My name is Abi Agina, handing over to Betty Okari.
And Secretary General Ban Ki-moon has called for urgent talks to avert civil war in Burundi as Bujumbura defended the actions of its security forces and rejected any idea of stationing foreign troops on its soil. Well, Ban said that he would send his special advisor Jamal Benomar to the region for talks with the Burundi government, other countries and the African Union on ways to defuse the crisis that has spurred fears of a return to full-scale ethnic conflict in the worst clashes since a military coup was foiled in May. While insurgents attacked military camps in the capital Bujumbura on Friday, and nearly 90 people were killed in the ensuing violence. UN Human Rights Chief Zaid Ra'ad Al-Hussein said on Tuesday the authorities had responded to the attacks with house searches, arrests and alleged summary executions. The United Nations and the African Union have started preparing for the possible deployment of international peacekeepers in case the violence worsens.
Violence in Burundi. What we have seen over the past few days is chilling. The country is on the brink of a civil war that risks engulfing the entire region. I have asked Mr. Jamal Benomar, my special advisor, to go to the region before the end of this week to speak to the African Union, the countries in the region, and of course the government of Burundi. An inclusive political dialogue is needed urgently. We must do all we can to prevent the mass violence and act decisively should it erupt.
Now let's move on to sports, and former Cameroon captain Samuel Eto'o has been appointed interim player manager at the Turkish club Antalyaspor. The four-time African player of the year, who has also played for Barcelona, Inter Milan and Chelsea, takes over from Yusuf Simsek, whose contract was terminated by mutual consent earlier this month.
As the non-official interim player manager of Turkish side Antalyaspor, Eto'o is one of the most decorated players of all time, having won the African Player of the Year award 4 times, while he was third in the 2005 FIFA World Player of the Year awards. Mehmet Ugulu, the club's technical director, will assist Eto'o during his time in the role.
He's not just a footballer, he's a good person, down to earth and respectful. I've never seen a star player who is so normal. I hope he will stay in Turkey for many years. I hope that he stays here as part of the coaching team. I would really love it.
Right, and that's where we wind up this edition of KTN Newsdesk Part 1. Part 2 is coming up shortly on KTN News Channel. My name is Betty Okari. Have a lovely afternoon and see you tomorrow, God willing. Bye.